Continue with our daily Gemara. We're in Sanhedrin, Kuf Ches Amud Beis 108. I'm sorry, Kuf Tes Amud Aleph 109a. And now we get to the third category of people that the Mishnah mentions as being those who lost their share in the world to come. Generation of the flood, we discussed that at length earlier. The people, the generation of the Tower of Babel, we discussed that yesterday. And now we get into not a full generation, but a group of people, the people of Sedom, the famous city in which Avraham Avinu's nephew Lot lived, and they were behaving inappropriately with debauchery, as we shall describe. And Avraham works to try to defend them, beseeching Hashem, but in the end, he only saves Lot and his family. And the details of the story are described in the book of Genesis in quite detail. But here the Gemara gets into some of the, at least to start, we're going to get into the background of the behavior of those in Sedom. So as is often the case with these kinds of Gemara, with this Gemara is that it, I mentioned this before, the Mishnah is a more brief text, and there are sometimes texts from that generation, from that age, from that era, that are more elaborate, and the Mishnah will begin with that, known as Braisos, the Seftus, or whatnot. So the line begins with the word Ra La Torah. It's about the middle of the page, and there's the colon, and after the colon, the Gemara quotes the Mishnah, which reads, the people of Sedom lost their share in the world to come, and then it closes the colon, and then the Gemara reads, after quoting the Mishnah, the relevant text in the Mishnah. Tan Rabbanan, our sages taught in one such Mishnaic age text, but not the actual Mishnah. Either Braisa or Tosefta. Here it's a Tosefta. Sages taught, Anshe Sedom, the people of Sedom, Ein lehem chel kol haba, do not have any share in the world to come. Shneimar, as the verse reads, Anshe Sedom, the people of Sedom, Royim, were bad, v'chatoyim, and sinners laHashem, to God, ma'od, very much. This is the same verse. So the Gemara says, Royim b'olam haza, bad in this world, v'chatoyim, and sinners l'olam haba, to the world to come, implying that they lost their share in the world to come. This verse is the same verse that the Mishnah quoted as well. Yep. Whereas the Mishnah there said that they do get up in judgment, and we discussed what that means when we learned the Mishnah at the time. But here the Gemara is going to further analyze this verse and the various different details here. They were bad, they sinned to God exceedingly. So what do these details represent? And that's what the Gemara is going to discuss presently. So Amar Rav Yehuda says, Royim, they were bad, begufan, with their body, meaning to say illicit relations, v'chatoyim, and they sinned b'mamoinam, with their money, theft, or not helping others when they should, as shall be explained. How does the Gemara derive that the word bad, royim, refers to the body? Would Yehuda come to this conclusion? And chatoyim, sin, means a sin with money, related to money, to property. So the Gemara says as follows: Royim begufam, they were bad with their bodies. As the verse reads, this is a story of Yosef HaTzadik, Joseph, when he's in the pit, before he goes in the pit, when he's in Egypt and he's a servant for Potiphar, and Potiphar's wife tries to seduce him, and he says, how can I do this? My master trusts me, and he gives me everything except for you. How can I do this? And he says, how can I do this great evil? So here the verse refers to an illicit relationship that was about to happen with the term ra, evil. And therefore this indicates that the word ra, evil, bad, is association with bodily misbehavior. And therefore the Gemara says, when the verse describes the people of Sedom as royim, bad, it means bodily misbehavior in terms of intimacy. And it's interesting, we've had this idea before, that this verse cited to support the translation is the antidote, in that people of Sedom were actually engaged in royim, in evil behavior of inappropriate relationships, whereas Yosef actually withheld and withstood the test, did not engage. And he's the verse cited to substantiate the translation of royim to mean inappropriate intimate relations. So it's interesting, the verse that we're using to derive the translation is actually the antidote. It's not the first time we had this. I think we made this point earlier in other such scenarios. And then we said, when the verse says, sorry, this is the end of the quote from this verse of Joseph. And they sinned. That the Gemara earlier translated, Rav translated to mean that when the verse said that people of Sedom sinned, it means sin with money, with property, with lack of charity, with stealing. How do we know this? The verse reads, and you will have a sin. This is a reference to the verse which describes that a person should not turn a blind eye to a fellow Jew in need. And when someone's needy, he should open up his heart and help him. And the verse there says, don't rely on the fact that, the 7th year of Shemitah is coming, the fields are rest, and anybody who wants can come and take. If someone's hungry and someone's asking you for help, give it. And there the verse says, if you don't give him and help them, it will be for you a sin. This word, using this word chet, sin, and thus when the Torah uses the word chatayim, sinners, for the people of Sedom, we conclude that it means monetary sin, sins related to money. And here again, it's the antidote. The verse is actually saying not to close your heart, which is the antidote to the people of Sedom who did close their heart and not help their fellow in their time of need. Now the verse said LaHashem, when the verse described the people of Sedom, it said Royim, they were bad in their body, comparing it to the story of Joseph, sinned with money, comparing it to the law of not closing your heart to your fellow Jew who needs help. And then the verse says LaHashem, unto God. They sinned unto God. The people of Sedom sinned unto God. What does this mean? Zuberchas Hashem. This is this idea that they literally translated, actually Berach Hashem means blessing God, but it's a euphemism for the opposite of blessing, taking God's name and blasphemy, essentially cursing God is actually what it means. And that's self-evident. LaHashem, sin unto God, the sin directly to God, taking God's name and cursing. Ma'od, the verse said they sinned unto God very much, exceedingly. This word ma'od, says the Gemara, is a reference to Shemaskavdim v'chaitim, exceedingly, because they intentionally sinned. It's not like they sinned out of a sense of desire, couldn't control themselves, but actually did so intentionally, with purposefully sinned. So in continuing with our conversation yesterday, we have like the people of the Mabul, generation of the flood, who just engaged in sin because they couldn't control themselves and they just enjoyed the physical world and just did it for the fun. You had the people of the Tower of Babel who were more sophisticated heretics. They believed in God, but they wanted to be left alone. They wanted to take control of their own lives, all pointing to idol worship. Whereas here, it's lahaches. It's intentionally antagonistic. So it's even a level deeper than the previous two, in some way. The Gemara continues. But Masnisa Tana, it was taught in the Mishnaic age text, in the Tosefta, the reverse, at least in its relation to the first two words. The way Rav Yehuda just translated it was, the word royim, bad, means misbehavior of the body, and comparing it to the verse where Joseph says, how can I do this evil, this bad, in engaging with Potiphar's wife? And the word chatayim, the word and they sinned, the people in Sedom sinned, was a reference to sinning with money, comparing it to the verse which says, one who turns a blind eye to a fellow Jew when he needs help, he will have a sin. Now this Mishnaic text is the reverse. Royim b'mamoinam, that the word that they did evil, they did bad, that's a reference to bad with their own money. Chatayim, and they sinned, begufam, with their bodies, with illicit relations. So it's the same sin, but different word meaning different sin. Originally the word royim, bad, meant body. Chatayim, sin, meant money. And here it's the reverse. Royim, bad, means with their money, monetary sin, and chatayim, sin, means begufam, with their body. How do we know? And actually the verse, this version quotes the same texts, but a different part of the same texts. Royim b'mamonim, they were bad with their money. The verse reads, in that same verse which is describing someone who turns a blind eye to a fellow Jew and asking for help, the verse says, and you will look badly at your friend, at your fellow. You'll look bad. And thus, when the verse says that the people of Sedom were bad, it means an issue of money. Everyone, your poor friend. And this text comes to the conclusion that the word chatayim, sins, means they sin with their body. The verse reads, that Joseph says, how can I do this bad? But then it goes on to say, and I will have sinned before God. Thus implying that sin Chet is an issue of illicit relations. Perhaps what's interesting here is what's the difference between bad and sin, and why one's with the body, one's with money. It would seem to me that the word roy and bad is in relationship between two people. So, between man and his fellow man. That's what ra means. And chet, sin, means between man and God. And in some way, each of these two sins, between whether it's an issue of monetary sin or an issue of intimate relations, have both of these issues. Right? When Yosef says that, how can I do this bad thing, ra, he's referring to doing a bad thing to Potiphar, his master. How can I be with you, my master's wife, when my master trusted me so much? And that's when he uses the word ra. In other words, he's betraying a fellow man, and that's when he employs the word ra. And likewise, earlier, when we said that ra means a monet. Right, and the next verse, which describes ra as a monetary verse, the next version, which says the word ra means that they were monetary sin, the verse quoted is v'ra necha b'achicha evi, and you look badly at your fellow poor man. Again, ra, the word ra, bad, associated with a sin towards somebody else. So either the illicit relation is a sin towards somebody else, in the case of Yosef, that's what it would have been, or the ra, the bad, is I'm looking at my fellow man badly. And then the word chet, sin, is between man and God. And this is also true of money issue and intimacy. Intimacy certainly is a sin to God. And that's the verse quoted earlier, that's the verse quoted with respect to saying that sin means illicit relationships with Yosef, is v'chatasi le'lakim, I will have sinned before God. In other words, had Yosef engaged with Potiphar's wife, would have been two things: ra, bad, to Potiphar, to his master, and chet le'lakim, a sin to God. And likewise with the issue of money, the verse says you look badly at your fellow, bad towards your friend because you're closing your eye, and it will be for you a sin to God that you looked away from your fellow man. So this would seem to be the theme here: chet, sin between man and God, and ra, bad, between man and a fellow. And the two texts put those two things either with sin or with sin of money or sin of intimacy, respectively. And they each can work both ways, because a sin with intimacy is both between man and as well between man and God. And likewise, the sin of not helping somebody else is between man and man, obviously, and between man and God as well. I hope that was somewhat clear. Okay, similar to that which we said earlier about the people of the flood, the Gemara says as follows: Tan Rabbanan, our sages taught, answers to them, the people of Sedom, loinus go, they only became haughty in their behavior and started to behave badly, only because God did good for them. The same thing is true of the people of the flood, where we said earlier that they lived so well that they forgot about the provider of that goodness. And a similar thing happened with the people of Sedom. How's that? Maksibahem. What does it say of them? And here the Gemara now quotes 3 verses from Iyov, and I'll read them in our trusted translation here, the Art Scroll version of Scripture. So it's Iyov chapter 28, verses 5, 6, 7, and 8. So it's 4 verses. So 5 reads, and it's Eretz Mimena Yachal Lechem. There is a land where fruit once grew, v'tachta, but in its place, nepach kamay eish, it's been turned into fire. The people of Sedom being turned over. Mokim saper avaneha, v'afores zahav loy. It was a place where stones were sapphires, and it had dust of gold. Netiv nasiv lo yadu ayit, a root not known to the buzzard, meaning they didn't lack anything. Ayat v'loy shizafu ayin. On a root not known to the buzzard, the vulture's eyes had not seen, meaning they were never attacked. Aye lo yedrichu b'nei shachatz. Lions. Ayin aya. That's the previous verse. Le'drichu v'nei shachatz le'eda love shachal. lions' whelps did not traverse it, and lions did not pass over it. Meaning it was a place that did very, very well. And then there was the destruction. And Amru, the people of Sedom said, because we have a land that has breads, plentiful food, and we have dust like gold, like dust. Why should we feed those who pass through our cities? They only come to make us lose our money. Let's forget this idea of helping those who pass through us. Regel meaning feet, people who travel. Shenemar, as the verse reads. This is in Iyov Chavches Dalet 28:4, also in Iyov. And there the verse reads, Paratz nachal me'im gar haneshkacha mini ragol dalu me'enesh no, which translates as 28:4. Sorry. It's the verse just before the verse we quoted earlier. A river bursts forth from its normal flow to where it is unknown to human feet. It rises and surges over people. But if you hear the way the translation is, it's Paratz Nachal Me'im Gar. The river emerged to destroy them. Haneshkachem, from those who forgot. Mini regel, the idea of people walking and feeding them. Okay. Now the Gemara continues in analyzing a verse in Tehillim. This time related to the people of Sedom. And the verse is as follows. Darash Rav expounded. Madik, what's the meaning of the verse, which reads in Tehillim, chapter 62:4. Ad anata saseu al ish. How long will you scheme on man? Teratzchu kulchem kikir natu geder. You will murder them all like a kikir natu, like a wall that's falling. Geder atchuya, like a fence that's that's a wavering fence that's going to fall. So the literal meaning actually is, how long will you be scheming against men? A wall should fall upon you. But the way the Gemara is reading it is Malman Shari knows the name about a moment. It tells us that the people of Sedom would put their eyes on those who had money, and they would put this person next to a wall that's about to fall, and they would push the wall on this person who bought him this money, and they would go and take his money. In other words, the verse is saying that they would scheme to put the wall there. Not that those who scheme should have the wall fall on them, but a different translation in that they scheme to have the wall pushed onto these people who had money so that they can go take it. So murder to get people's money. So the lust after money led to actual murder. Darash Rav expounded. Madik said, what's the meaning of the verse? This is a verse in Iyov again, chapter 24, verse 16. They dug into houses in the dark. They locked themselves in their home during the day. Or they don't know the light of day. So what does this mean that they dug in the dark and they hid out in the day? It says like this. This teaches us. They would identify those who had money, and they would ask this wealthy person, "Could you please hold on to my perfume?" And the person who was holding the perfume would put it into his treasury house. At night, these people would come out. The people who at night time, the person who lent or asked the rich person to hold his perfume, and they would smell where's the perfume, and this way they can identify where their person's treasury is and take their gold. In other words, they use the perfume as a way of being able to help them identify where this person held their treasury, and that way they can go rob it and loot it at night. As the verse reads, Yashuv they returned at night, and they howled like dogs, and they roamed the city. When they roamed the city, this is a verse in Tehillim 59:7. They would go dig under in the treasury, and clean the guy out and loot the entire place. So let the guy hold some of the perfume, help me identify where his treasury is, and then at night sniff it out and dig under and get it out. That's how desperate they were to steal and thief from one another. And the Gemara now quotes a number of verses in Iyov, all of which in Job, all of which describe the people of Sedom. It says like this: Arum people would go around naked without clothing to hold themselves in the cold, meaning because people didn't treat them well. There was no one to help anybody, and people just had no clothing even, and no one to have mercy. Likewise, they would lead away the donkey of the orphan. Orphan is a donkey. write it off, take it. And Yechablu Shoel Almana, and they would take the donkey of the widow. Again, no mercy for the orphan and the widow, taking away their donkey and their ox. Gvulo Sasigu, they would trespass, break boundaries. Eider Gazolu, they would steal a flock of sheep, V'yidu, and let them pasture, as if their own. Another verse in Job, V'hu lekvodos Yuval, and they, this is 21:31. It's the verse here. Who is he who can be told? Sorry, no, that's the wrong verse. 21:32. Sorry, 21:32. He brought to the grave and lies forever upon a mound of dirt. V'hu lekvodos Yuval is, led to the grave. I'll go the shishkot and watching and guarding, just wasting away and not having any mercy on anybody else. Stop over here, and the Gemara is going to continue on the wicked ways of the people of Sedom and the desperation for money. So, we can add one more element here, and something we discussed in the past here, is in the same way the people of the Tower of Babel were seeking idol worship, seeking their dependence from God. There's an unfortunate new idol, and that could be money. And in the same way, the idol worship itself, as described, leads to debauched behavior. A person sees himself independent than God is a cause for war and conflict between people, because they don't have a common allegiance to the supreme being. So likewise, and sometimes even worse, is the issue of money. Putting money on a pedestal as if it itself is an idol, if itself is a god. All means a person can justify all kinds of means when it comes to a couple of dollars in their own pocket. And we need to be on guard, to be careful that we are not, God forbid, allowing that kind of behavior to get to our heads. Obviously not in such an extreme way, for sure not, but even in a more subtle way, justify, it's only a little bit I'm taking here, no one's going to notice, no one's going to think, I can get away with the honest, be honest, be straightforward, without any ifs, ands, or buts. I'll just conclude with a story from my grandfather, who told me that when he was younger, and he was in Australia, living in Australia. He was born in Australia, and he was a young man when the refugees started coming in from post-war Europe, coming into Australia. And many of the Jewish people needed to get loans, and the only way to get a loan was to have an Australian sign off for them. So my grandfather was a young unmarried man. His parents at the time who lived in Australia already, were a home open for all these refugees. Many of them lived there, got married there, and all kinds. My great-grandparents took care of them, and my grandfather would sign off on loans for many of these refugees to get their businesses started. And that was it. He forgot about it. Many years later, my grandfather is taking my father and his brothers and sister on a vacation to a holiday home, and one of my uncles broke the toilet in the house that they rented. And my grandfather called the owner of the home and apologized for the fact that his son broke a toilet in the house and asked to pay for it. The owner of the home that they rented tells my grandfather, I've had many people rent my home and never had someone so honest to tell me that they broke something, I want to pay for it. Most people, they break something and they move on, and that's the end of it. They just write it off as part of the rent. And he tells my grandfather, I'm a bank manager, and whatever credit you get at your bank, I'll match it, come to my bank. So my grandfather switched, went to the new bank. And when he comes to the new bank, this person, he gets the same line of credit, but he has to pay it up every month. Now, in his business, that wasn't useful. He has to have longer-term credit. Being you have to paying his credit every month is not going to be very helpful for him. So he was stuck. He couldn't go back to the old bank because he just ditched them. And now the new bank isn't as good of a deal. So he starts shopping around for another banker. And when he comes to one bank, he's discussing the terms, and the manager comes out and says, "Is your name Mr. Max New?" He says, "Yep." He says, "I never met you, but I've seen your signature on many people many years ago who needed someone to sign off on a loan, and you did it. If you were such an amazing person, being capable of signing off on somebody else's loan, I will match your old credit line of credit and do you even better. And this is my grandfather's bank till this very day. All to say the importance of being honest, straightforward, without any ifs, ands, or buts. And God forbid, when the idol of money starts to entice us, it can, God forbid, allow us to justify many means that thinking rationally we never would do. God willing, we'll continue tomorrow more on the story of Sedom.